The scalpel's edge caught the harsh laboratory light as Vorthik pressed it against the pale flesh of the unconscious specimen. Around him, 12 of the galaxy's most renowned xenobiologists leaned forward, their compound eyes gleaming with scientific hunger. The human lay motionless on the dissection table, neural inhibitors keeping it locked in chemical sleep. Fascinating, whispered Dr. Quillith, her feathered crest rippling with excitement. Look at the skin texture, so thin, so vulnerable. How did such fragile creatures ever survive their homeworld? Vorthik made the first incision, a clean line across the human's abdomen. The flesh parted easily, revealing layers of fat and muscle. Beneath, the preliminary scans showed unusual cellular density in the muscular tissue. He noted for the recording, perhaps some form of adaptive evolution. The hegemony had been studying these humans for 3 cycles now, ever since their first contact with the primitive species. Earth's children had impressed no one, no natural armor, no venomous glands, no psionic abilities. They were soft, pink mammals who had barely mastered interstellar travel. The Hegemony Council had classified them as a minor species, suitable for labor and biological study. The cardiovascular system appears standard for a bipedal mammal, observed Dr. Nexathu, his tentacles writhing as he manipulated the scanner. Though the heart rate remains elevated despite the sedatives, Vorthik frowned, checking his instruments. The human's vitals were indeed climbing, but the neural inhibitors should have prevented any physiological response. He increased the dosage and continued his work, peeling back layers of tissue to expose the internal organs. The human's name was Korvax Brennan, though the scientists knew him only as Specimen 7 Alpha. He'd been captured during a raid on a human colony ship, one of dozens the hegemony had processed in recent months. The others had been sold to mining consortiums or processing plants. Brennan's physiology had shown certain anomalies that made him perfect for dissection. Note the unusual density of the nervous system, Vorthik murmured, tracing the network of nerves with his probe, far more complex than our initial assessment suggested. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humans had been lying about their nature. From the moment of first contact, every interaction, every diplomatic exchange, every biological sample had been carefully curated. The humans who met alien species were volunteers, specially selected and chemically modified, their hormone levels suppressed, their reflexes dulled, their true nature buried beneath layers of pharmaceutical restraint. The thing that made humans truly dangerous wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was the carefully controlled violence that lived in their blood, the evolutionary legacy of 10,000 generations of predators. On Earth, they called it many things: adrenaline, fight-or-flight response, berserker rage. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humans were barely domesticated killers who had learned to cage their own savagery. The muscular fiber composition is extraordinary, Dr. Quillith noted, taking tissue samples. These fibers could potentially contract with tremendous force. Vorthik nodded, then paused as an alarm chimed softly. The neural inhibitor levels were dropping. Impossible. He'd administered enough sedative to keep a Thurian war beast unconscious for days. Increase the dosage, he ordered his assistant. But even as the chemicals flooded Brennan's system, his body was already fighting back. Deep in his cells, ancient mechanisms were awakening. His adrenal glands, compressed and nearly dormant from months of suppression drugs, began to swell. His liver processed the alien sedatives with savage efficiency, metabolizing them into harmless compounds. Sir, the subject's temperature is rising, warned Dr. Nexathu. Vorthik looked down at the human's face. The pale skin was flushing red, veins standing out like rivers of fire. The eyes, closed for so long, began to flutter, and in the depths of Brennan's unconscious mind, something stirred, something that remembered the taste of blood and the feel of an enemy's throat beneath crushing fingers. Increase sedation to maximum, Vorthik ordered, but his voice carried the first note of uncertainty. Around the laboratory, security systems hummed quietly. The facility was built to contain the most dangerous specimens in the galaxy: acid spitting, Vrex, psychic morphlings, even captured hegemony battle beasts. But it had never been designed to hold a human who had finally stopped pretending to be tame. Brennan's heart rate spiked beyond the machine's ability to measure. His breathing deepened, drawing oxygen into lungs that seemed to expand beyond their normal capacity. And in his hands still strapped to the table, his fingers began to curl into fists. The cage was breaking. The first thing Korvax Brennan felt was pain, not the sharp, clean pain of the scalpel, but the deeper agony of his body fighting back to life, The second thing he felt was rage, pure and molten, flooding his system like liquid fire. His eyes snapped open. Impossible. Dr. Vorthik stepped back, compound eyes widening. The neural inhibitors should. Brennan's right hand tore free from its restraint. With a sound like ripping metal, the carbonite straps that could hold a battle-ready Cytherian simply snapped under the force of human muscle powered by evolutionary fury. Sedate him. Now, Vorthik shrieked. Dr. Nexthu lunged forward with an injector. But Brennan caught the alien's tentacle mid-strike. The appendage, capable of crushing steel, crumpled like paper in the human's grip. Nexthu's scream filled the laboratory as Brennan twisted, the wet sound of tearing flesh accompanying his movement. The human sat up on the dissection table, his abdominal incision bleeding freely, and looked around the room with eyes that held no trace of the docile specimen they'd been studying. What they saw instead was something that shouldn't exist: a predator that had been pretending to be prey. Security alert. Containment breach in Lab 7. The automated voice echoed through the facility as Brennan ripped the remaining restraints from his limbs. Dr. Quillith activated her personal shield generator, but Brennan moved faster than her nervous system could track. He vaulted from the table and closed the distance in a single bound, his hand punching through the energy barrier like it was made of gossamer. His fingers found her throat, and the delicate bones of her neck snapped with barely any pressure. "What are you?" Vorthik whispered, backing toward the emergency exit. Brennan turned toward him, blood streaming down his torso from the surgical wounds. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia of warfare. "We told you we were explorers. We told you we were peaceful." He stepped over Quillith's twitching corpse. "We lied." The laboratory door burst open as hegemony security forces poured in 6 armored Cytherian warriors, each one standing 8 feet tall and equipped with enough firepower to level a city block. Their plasma rifles whined as they charged. "Stand down, specimen," barked the squad leader. Brennan smiled, and the expression was worse than any snarl. No, the first Cytherian fired, but Brennan was already moving. The plasma bolt seared the air where he'd been standing as he rolled behind a bank of equipment. The aliens advanced in perfect formation, their tactical systems tracking his heat signature. What they didn't account for was that humans had been killing things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than themselves since before they'd invented fire. Brennan grabbed a surgical laser from the equipment rack and modified its setting with a few quick adjustments. As the first Cytherian rounded the corner, Brennan triggered the device. The concentrated beam carved through the alien's armor like butter, severing him cleanly in half. "Impossible," the squad leader muttered. "How did it?" Brennan was already among them, moving with the fluid grace of a persistence hunter. He grabbed the second Cytherian's rifle and used it as a club, the reinforced stock caving in the alien's skull with a sound like breaking pottery. The third tried to bring his weapon to bear, but Brennan caught the barrel and twisted it back on itself, the plasma chamber exploding in a shower of superheated metal that reduced the warrior to ash. The remaining 3 opened fire simultaneously, their plasma bolts creating a web of death that should have incinerated anything organic. But Brennan moved like liquid lightning, flowing between the beams with inhuman precision. His surgical modifications were healing as he fought, alien tissue regenerators meant for their experiments now serving to keep him alive. He reached the 4th Cytherian and drove his fingers into the gap between helmet and armor. The alien's head came off with a wet pop. The 5th tried to activate his suit's close combat systems, but Brennan ripped the power cord from the armor's back and crushed it in his bare hand. The squad leader, the last survivor, dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. "Please," he whispered. "We didn't know. We thought you were weak." Brennan knelt beside him, his voice gentle despite the carnage surrounding them. "That was the point. We wanted you to think we were harmless. We wanted you to get comfortable." He placed his hand on the alien's shoulder, almost tenderly. "We wanted you to make the mistake of cutting one of us open." "Why?" the Cytherian gasped. "Because," Brennan said, "someone had to bring the message back to your people. Someone had to tell them what happens when you hurt humans." He stood, leaving the alien alive among the corpses of his squad. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the facility as blast doors began to slam shut, but it was already too late. The thing they kept caged beneath their skin was free, and it was spreading. In laboratories across the station, other human specimens were beginning to wake up, and they were all very, very angry. Station Commander Ulesh had seen combat across 17 different star systems. But nothing had prepared him for the reports flooding his command center. Containment breach in Sectors 7 through 12. His tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with stress. We've lost contact with security teams Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. How many specimens have we lost control of? Ulish demanded. 43 humans, sir, and the number is climbing. Ulish's forearms worked the command console with practiced efficiency, pulling up surveillance feeds from across the station. What he saw defied military logic. Single humans, most of them wounded from ongoing experiments, were tearing through. Squads of elite hegemony soldiers like they were made of paper dot in Sector 9. A human female designated as Specimen 12 Delta had been undergoing neural mapping. When the alarm started, Dr. Vishik's team had been attempting to catalog her brain structure when she'd suddenly torn free from the restraint web. Now she stood in the center of a circle of dead hegemony scientists, their bodies arranged with methodical precision. Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked. She's not just killing them, she's learning from them, studying their anatomy. The surveillance feed showed the human female examining a Vishik corpse, her fingers tracing the alien's nervous system with the same clinical detachment the scientists had shown her. When a security team breached the laboratory, she was ready for them. She'd learned exactly where to strike each species for maximum damage. Deploy the containment drones, Ulish ordered. In Sector 11, Korvax Brennan moved through the corridor like a force of nature. The station's automated defenses had activated, filling the air with laser grids and plasma barriers. But he navigated them with impossible precision. Behind him, a growing group of freed humans followed, each one adding their own expertise to the collective fury. Dr. Hemlock, a human cybernetics specialist who'd been scheduled for brain dissection, had interfaced with the station's computer systems. Her neural implants, primitive by hegemony standards, had somehow adapted to alien architecture. I've got access to their tactical database, she reported. They have 40,000 personnel on this station. Good, Brennan replied, ripping the door off a weapons locker. That should be enough to send a message. The freed humans armed themselves with captured hegemony weapons, but many found the alien technology awkward and unreliable. Instead, they improvised. Maintenance tools became weapons. Laboratory equipment became bombs. Even the station's own infrastructure became a weapon against its builders. In the command center, Ulish watched his carefully ordered facility descend into chaos. How many casualties? He asked. 800 and counting, sir, and the humans are. They're coordinating. Somehow, it was true, across the station. Humans who had never met were working together with seamless efficiency. Specimen 23 Gamma, a human soldier who'd lost his legs in capture, directed others from an improvised command post, while Specimen 6 Beta, a human engineer, systematically destroyed the station's life support systems for alien species while leaving human-compatible areas intact. They're hurting us, Ulish realized with growing horror. They're not just fighting, they're hunting us. The humans moved through the station with the coordinated precision of a pack of predators. They cut off escape routes, disabled communications, and eliminated hegemony personnel with ruthless efficiency. But it wasn't random violence. It was something far more terrifying. It was strategic. In Sector 4, Commander Thexeville led the station's largest remaining security force. 200 elite hegemony warriors armed with enough firepower to conquer a planet. They'd established a defensive perimeter around the station's central reactor, preparing to make their last stand. How many humans are heading our way? Thexeville asked. 23 confirmed, sir. They're moving through the maintenance tunnels. Thexeville laughed bitterly. 23 humans against 200 hegemony soldiers, even if they've gone feral. The mathematics are in our favor, but as the humans emerged from the access tunnels, Thexeville realized that mathematics meant nothing when facing something that had evolved to kill things bigger than itself. The humans didn't charge in a frontal assault. Instead, they moved like shadows, using the station's own architecture against its defenders. Brennan appeared behind the defensive line, having somehow climbed through a ventilation shaft that should have been too small for his frame. His bare hands found the first guard's throat before the alien could sound an alarm. Dr. Hemlock materialized from a service corridor, her improvised explosive devices already armed and ready. The battle began not with the thunder of weapons fire, but with the whisper of humans moving through the darkness. They struck from above, below, and within, turning the hegemony's own defensive positions into death traps. Fall back, Thexeville ordered. But there was nowhere to go. The humans had cut off every escape route as the massacre began. One thought echoed through the command center's communications array, transmitted by the dying gasps of hegemony soldiers. What have we awakened? Station Commander Ulesh had commanded fleets that reduced entire worlds to ash. But watching the tactical display now, he felt something he'd never experienced before. Fear. Not the clean fear of battle, but the primal terror of being hunted by something that understood him better than he understood himself. Sir, we've lost all contact with sectors for through 15, reported his aide. The humans have established what appears to be territory. Ulish pulled up the station schematic. Red zones marked areas under human control, and the pattern made his blood run cold. They weren't just randomly destroying, they were claiming the station piece by piece, systematically cutting off life support to alien-compatible zones while preserving areas that could sustain human life. They're not trying to escape, he realized. They're making this place their own. In the captured sectors, the humans had undergone a transformation that defied xenobiological understanding. Dr. Hemlock stood in what had once been Laboratory Complex 7, her neural implants interfacing directly with alien medical equipment. Around her, 23 other humans lay on modified surgical tables, not as victims, but as volunteers. The hegemony's bioaugmentation technology is crude but functional, she reported to Brennan, who sat nearby having additional armor plating grafted directly onto his bones. We can adapt it for human physiology. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The aliens had captured humans to study their biology, and now the humans were using that same research to evolve themselves into something even more dangerous. Decades of accumulated data on human anatomy, gathered through torture and dissection, was being turned against its creators. Brennan flexed his newly reinforced fingers, feeling the subdermal armor plating shift beneath his skin. How many more? Can we modify all of them? Hemlock replied. The aliens were thorough in their research. Too thorough. Across the station, the hegemony was learning a harsh lesson about human adaptability. In Command Center Alpha, tactical officers watched in horror as their own weapons systems turned against them. Specimen 31 Echo, a human hacker designated as a low-priority research subject, had somehow interfaced with the station's main computer. Impossible, whispered Technical Supervisor Crext H. The security protocols should prevent any unauthorized access. Your security protocols were designed to keep out hegemony technology, the human replied, her voice echoing from the station's speakers. Humans think differently. We don't follow your rules. The station's automated defenses, designed to contain specimens and repel invaders, began targeting hegemony personnel. Plasma turrets swiveled to track alien movement. Atmospheric processors began flooding certain sections with gases toxic to hegemony biology, but harmless to humans. In his command center, Ulish made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. Open a channel to the hegemony high command. We need reinforcements, sir. That would require revealing the extent of our research program. The high command might not approve of our methods. The high command can court-martial my corpse, Ulish snarled. Send the message. The transmission lasted exactly 47 seconds before the humans cut it off, but it was enough. Within hours, the first hegemony battle cruiser dropped out of hyperspace, followed by another, then another. Soon, a fleet of 12 warships surrounded the research station, their weapons systems powered and ready. Admiral Vexstar, commanding the relief force, opened a communication channel to the station. Commander Ulesh, we are prepared to evacuate essential personnel and sterilize the facility. What is your status? The reply that came back wasn't from Ulesh. It was from Kovacs Brennan, his voice carrying across the void with perfect clarity. Admiral, my name is Kovacs Brennan, formerly Specimen 7 Alpha. I want to discuss terms. Vexstar asked for eyes widen. You're the specimens. How did you? That's not important right now. Brennan interrupted. What's important is that you have a choice to make. You can try to destroy this station, but we've integrated ourselves into its systems. Any attack will trigger a quantum cascade that will take out half your fleet. It was a bluff, but it was a human bluff perfectly calculated to exploit alien psychology. The hegemony valued their ships above their personnel, and the threat of losing 6 battle cruisers would give them pause. Or, Brennan continued, you can listen to our terms. We want transport ships, enough to carry everyone on this station, human and alien alike. Impossible. We cannot allow you to leave. The security implications, Admiral, Brennan's voice, took on a tone that made hardened warriors shiver. You have 15 minutes to comply. After that, we demonstrate exactly why you should have left humans alone. The transmission ended, leaving the hegemony fleet in stunned silence. Below them, the research station continued its orbit, its hull scarred with battle damage, but its weapon systems still very much operational. And in the captured sectors, 43 humans prepared to show the galaxy what happened when you tried to cage humanity's true nature. Admiral Vextar had commanded battle fleets across 7 different galactic wars, but he'd never faced an enemy quite like this. The research station hung in space before his fleet like a wounded animal, but wounded animals were often the most dangerous. Sir, we're detecting massive power fluctuations from the station, reported his tactical officer. Their weapons systems are coming online. Impossible, Vextar muttered. That station has only minimal defensive capabilities, but as he watched, the station's hull began to transform. Sections that had appeared to be simple research laboratories split open to reveal concealed weapon emplacements. Sensor arrays that should have been purely scientific equipment rotated to track his fleet's movements. They've been lying to us about everything, he realized. On the station, Dr. Hemlock interfaced directly with the weapon systems, her enhanced neural implants allowing her to control multiple targeting computers simultaneously. The fleet's in optimal firing position, she reported. 47 vessels in total, but only 12 are true warships. Brennan stood beside her in what had once been the station's main laboratory, now converted into a combat command center. Around them, 43 humans worked with mechanical precision, each one enhanced with alien biotechnology and driven by generations of accumulated rage. Open a channel, Brennan ordered. Admiral Vextar's face appeared on the main screen, his compound eyes reflecting the bridge lights. You have 5 minutes to surrender before we reduce your station to atoms, Admiral. Brennan replied calmly, let me show you what humans really are. The station's primary weapons array fired. The blast took the hegemony fleet completely by surprise. What they thought was a research facility revealed itself as a weapons platform that had been masquerading as something benign. The first volley destroyed 3 escort vessels outright and crippled the battle cruisers. Evasive maneuvers, Vextar screamed, return fire. The space around the station erupted into chaos. Plasma beams and quantum torpedoes filled the void as the hegemony fleet tried to bring their superior firepower to bear. But the humans had studied their enemies well. Every shot was precisely calculated, every movement predicted. They're not fighting like specimens, the tactical officer reported. They're fighting like they know our technology better than we do. They did. Months of captivity had given the humans access to complete technical specifications of every hegemony system, while the aliens had been studying human biology. The humans had been studying hegemony warfare. The station rotated on its axis, bringing additional weapon batteries to bear. Dr. Hemlock's enhanced reflexes allowed her to track and target multiple vessels simultaneously, while other humans coordinated the station's defenses. With the precision of a military computer, focus fire. On the command ship, Brennan ordered. The station's primary beam cannon swiveled toward Vextar's flagship, its energy levels climbing to critical. But the Admiral's ship was protected by overlapping energy shields and point defense systems. The first blast merely scarred his hull. Is that the best you can do? Vextar transmitted MOCKI and GLY. Brennan smiled. No, that was just to get your attention. The station's hull split open in a dozen places, revealing concealed missile launchers. But these weren't standard weapons, they were something far more dangerous. Each missile contained a human volunteer, enhanced with life support systems and armed with improvised explosives. Boarding torpedoes, Hemlock announced with satisfaction. They want to study human biology. Let's give them a close-up examination. The missiles streaked toward the hegemony fleet, too small and fast for the point defense systems to intercept effectively. They struck 8 different vessels, and within minutes, the ship's internal communications erupted with screams and emergency alerts. On the bridge of the heavy cruiser Dominance, Captain Klexfer watched in horror as his security monitors showed humans moving through his ship's corridors like avenging demons. They'd somehow adapted to the ship's artificial gravity, atmospheric composition, and internal architecture within minutes of boarding. How are they moving so fast? He demanded. His tactical officer's response was cut off as the bridge doors exploded inward. A human female emerged from the smoke. her body enhanced with alien biotechnology, but her eyes burning with purely human fury. In her hands, she carried weapons that had once belonged to a security team. "Hello," she said pleasantly, "we'd like to discuss your research methods." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out as human boarding parties systematically captured hegemony vessels. But this wasn't random piracy, it was strategic. The humans were seizing ships with specific capabilities, transport vessels, manufacturing facilities, and most importantly, communication arrays. "Sir," Vexstar's tactical officer reported, "we're losing ships faster than we can respond. The boarding parties are taking prisoners, then we destroy the captured vessels," Vexstar ordered. "We cannot allow." His words were cut off as his own ship shuddered under impact. Through the bridge's main viewer, he saw something that chilled his blood, a human in improvised power armor, using magnetic boots to walk along the hull of his flagship. Korvax Brennan pressed his face against the viewer, his enhanced physiology allowing him to survive in vacuum. When he spoke, his words were transmitted directly through the ship's hull. "Admiral, we need to talk. The space battle was over. The humans had won not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of their enemy. They turned the hegemony's own technology against them, used their knowledge of alien psychology to predict their responses, and demonstrated once again that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or speed. It was adaptability. As the last hegemony vessel surrendered, Brennan transmitted a message that would echo across the galaxy. "This is just the beginning, Admiral." Vexstar knelt on the deck of his own flagship, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting as human guards watched him with predatory patience. Around him, the bridge crew that had survived the boarding lay in restraints, their proud military bearing broken by the swift and brutal efficiency of human combat. "You realize," Vexstar said, his voice carrying false bravado, "that destroying a hegemony fleet will bring the full weight of our military upon you. There will be nowhere in the galaxy you can hide." Korvax Brennan, still wearing his improvised power armor, stepped into the Admiral's field of view. His face was visible through the helmet's visor, and what Vexstar saw there was worse than rage. It was cold, calculating purpose. "That's exactly what we're counting on," Brennan replied. Across the captured fleet, the humans were working with mechanical precision. Dr. Hemlock had interfaced with the communication systems of every vessel, preparing to transmit on every frequency the hegemony used. Other humans cataloged the prisoners, studied their equipment, and prepared for what came next. "You don't understand," Vexstar continued. "The hegemony spans 3,000 worlds. Our military could sterilize your entire species." "Could," Brennan agreed, "but you won't." "Do you know why?" Before the Admiral could respond, the human keyed his communicator. Dr. Hemlock began the transmission. Every screen on the bridge activated simultaneously, showing a prepared broadcast that would be transmitted across the entire hegemony communication network. The image showed the research station's laboratories, but not as the scientists had left them. Instead, the cameras panned across chambers filled with alien corpses arranged in neat rows, their bodies dissected with the same clinical precision they'd once applied to human specimens. "Citizens of the hegemony," Brennan's voice narrated the footage. "For the past 3 years, your government has been conducting illegal biological experiments on captured human civilians. Children, elderly, pregnant women none were spared from your scientists' curiosity." The footage shifted to show the surviving research staff, now imprisoned in the same cells that had once held human subjects. They cowered as the cameras recorded their terror, their former scientific detachment replaced by the desperate fear of laboratory specimens. "We want you to understand," Brennan continued, "what you've created. You took peaceful explorers and turned them into weapons. You studied our biology to understand our weaknesses. Instead, you've given us the tools to become your perfect predators." Admiral Vexstar's eyes widened as he realized the true scope of the human strategy. "You're not trying to escape. You're declaring war." "Not war," Brennan corrected. "Education. You need to learn what happens when you hurt humans." The transmission continued, showing technical specifications of every piece of hegemony equipment the humans had captured and modified. Military secrets that had taken centuries to develop were broadcast openly, along with detailed analyses of their weaknesses. "Your plasma weapons are ineffective against targets moving faster than 0.73 light speed," the broadcast explained. "Your shield generators have a resonance frequency that can be exploited. With properly modulated energy pulses, your atmospheric processors can be reversed to create environments toxic to your species, but harmless to humans, across hegemony space. Military commanders watched in horror as their technological advantages evaporated, but the humans weren't finished. We have captured 4 to 7 hegemony vessels, Brennan announced. Their crews are being treated with the same care your scientists showed our people. Some are being used for biological experiments. Others are being studied to understand your psychology and social structures. The camera showed Admiral Vexstar himself, restrained and helpless. As a human medic prepared surgical instruments, the Admiral has volunteered to help us understand hegemony neurological responses to fear. This is barbaric, Vexstar whispered. Yes, Brennan agreed. It is, just like what you did to us. The broadcast reached its crescendo as Dr. Hemlock appeared on screen, her neural implants glowing with alien technology. We have also accessed the hegemony's complete database of military installations, trade routes, and civilian populations. This information is being distributed to every human colony in the galaxy. You're giving us the tools to fight back, she continued, and we will fight back, not for conquest, not for resources, but for justice. Every human who was tortured in your laboratories, every child who was dissected for your research, they will be avenged. The transmission ended with a simple message displayed across every screen in hegemony space. We are no longer your prisoners. Now you are ours. In the stunned silence that followed, Brennan removed his helmet and looked directly at Admiral Vexstar. You have a choice to make, Admiral. You can order your people to continue their research programs, and we will systematically hunt down and destroy every hegemony facility in the galaxy. Or you can help us send a different message. What message? Vexstar asked, his voice barely a whisper. That humanity is no longer hiding what we really are, Brennan replied, and that the galaxy had better learn to treat us with respect. The space around the captured fleet began to shimmer as human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Not the crude vessels the hegemony had seen before, but sleek warships built with stolen alien technology and powered by human determination. The real war was about to begin. 3 months after the Battle of Research Station Omega-7, the Hegemony Council convened an emergency session on their capital world of Nexus Prime. The Grand Chamber, designed to showcase the majesty of galactic civilization, now felt like a bunker as representatives from 3,000 worlds debated their response to the human crisis. The losses are catastrophic, reported military coordinator Jekyll, his normally perfect posture bent with defeat. 47 colonies have gone dark. We've lost contact with 17 fleet groups, and the humans, they're not just fighting us, they're converting our own people. The footage displayed on the chamber's main screen showed scenes from across hegemony space. Human forces, now equipped with modified alien technology, moved through captured territories with surgical precision. But what disturbed the Council most was that they weren't acting as conquerors. Instead, they were liberating other species that had been oppressed by hegemony rule. They're offering our subjects a choice, continued Jekyll. Join them in rebellion, or be left alone. Most are choosing rebellion. High Counselor Vextel, supreme leader of the hegemony, raised his primary manipulator for silence. What of our attempts to eliminate their homeworld? Earth is gone, sir, not destroyed, relocated. Somehow, they moved their entire planet to coordinates unknown. Our scouts report that human space now extends across 47 different star systems, all connected by technology we don't understand. The truth was more remarkable than the hegemony could have imagined. Korvax Brennan and his fellow survivors had returned to human space not as victims, but as teachers. The knowledge they gained from hegemony databases had accelerated human development by centuries. Ships that once took years to build now rolled off assembly lines in weeks. Weapons that had been theoretical concepts became reality. But more importantly, humanity had learned the value of unity. The same species that had once warred among themselves had found common cause in the face of alien threat. Every human world contributed to the war effort, not out of fear, but out of righteous anger. On New Geneva, the rebuilt human capital, Brennan stood before the Terran Assembly delivering his final report. His body bore the scars of enhancement and battle, but his eyes held the satisfaction of justice served. The hegemony has requested a formal ceasefire, he announced. They're willing to negotiate. The assembled representatives erupted in discussion, but Brennan raised his hand for silence. They're also willing to surrender custody of every human held in their territory, provide reparations for their research programs, and submit to monitoring by a joint human-alien commission. And if they refuse to honor these terms, asked Representative Morrison, her voice carrying the steel that had become common among human diplomats. Then we continue the demonstration. Brennan replied simply. The demonstration had been ongoing for 3 months now, and its effects rippled across the galaxy. Hegemony trade routes had become hunting grounds for human raiders. Military installations found themselves under siege by forces that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Most devastatingly, the hegemony's client species were abandoning their overlords in droves, inspired by humanity's example of successful resistance. Dr. Hemlock, now serving as humanity's chief intelligence officer, stood to address the assembly. Her neural implants, once crude modifications, had evolved into something that interfaced seamlessly with both human and alien technology. The hegemony's surrender terms are acceptable, she reported, but incomplete. They're offering to cease their research programs on humans, but they haven't addressed their treatment of other species. The Vrillian mining slaves, the Kethri breeding programs, the systematic exploitation of pre-spaceflight civilizations, all of that continues. Representative Chen leaned forward. Are you suggesting we expand our objectives? I'm suggesting, Hemlock replied, that we've proven something important. Humanity isn't just capable of defending itself, we're capable of defending others. The question is whether we want to use that capability. The debate that followed would reshape galactic politics. For millennia to come, some representatives argued for a limited victory to secure humanity's freedom and withdraw from galactic affairs. Others, led by Brennan, advocated for a more comprehensive approach. We have a choice, Brennan said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced the worst the galaxy could offer and emerged stronger. We can take our revenge and go home, or we can make sure this never happens to anyone else. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. 6 months later, Admiral Vextar stood once again on a starship bridge, but this time, he was serving as a liaison officer aboard the human dreadnought Defiance. His role was voluntary, part of the new compact that had emerged from humanity's victory, approaching the Kethian system, reported the ship's navigator, a young human whose ancestors had been among the specimens rescued from hegemony laboratories. Vextar watched the tactical display with professional interest. The human fleet had grown from a handful of stolen vessels to an armada that rivaled anything the hegemony had ever assembled. But more importantly, it included ships from dozens of species that had joined humanity's cause. The Kethri have agreed to our terms, he asked. Captain Sarah Okafor, the Defiance's commanding officer, nodded. Full emancipation of their slave populations, conversion of breeding facilities to medical centers, and integration into the new galactic compact. They're not happy about it, but they're smart enough to see which way the wind is blowing. The galactic compact, humanity's answer to the hegemony's authoritarian rule, had spread across the galaxy. With remarkable speed, it offered protection to any species willing to abandon exploitative practices and embrace principles of self-determination and mutual aid. Those who refused found themselves facing the same treatment the hegemony had received. Contact from the surface, reported the communications officer. The Kethri leadership is ready to sign the formal accords. As the ceremony proceeded on the planet below, Vextar reflected on the changes that had swept across the galaxy. The hegemony still existed, but as a shadow of its former self. Most of its member species had defected to the compact, drawn by humanity's promise of protection and prosperity. Admiral, Captain Okafor said quietly, do you ever regret your people's decision to study us? Vextar considered the question carefully. Around him, the bridge crew worked with the easy efficiency of a team that had learned to trust each other completely. Humans and aliens served side by side. Their differences transformed from sources of conflict into sources of strength. Regret is the wrong word, he replied finally. Your species taught us something important about ourselves. We thought we were civilized because we were strong. You showed us that true civilization requires compassion, and if someone threatens that civilization, Vextar's compound eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the bridge's viewports, then they'll learn what we learn, that some cages, once broken, can never be rebuilt. In the months that followed, the galaxy settled into a new pattern. The compact grew steadily, incorporating species that had never dreamed of standing up to their oppressors. Human advisors helped newly liberated worlds develop their own defense forces and governing systems. Research facilities that had once tortured prisoners became centers of learning and healing, and in the depths of space, aboard ships that traveled routes no hegemony vessel had ever mapped, humans continued their original mission exploration. But now they explored not as naive ambassadors seeking friendship, but as guardians ensuring that the darkness they'd experienced would never again fall across innocent worlds. Korvax Brennan, now bearing the title of Compact Marshal, stood on the observation deck of humanity's flagship, watching stars whirl past in their eternal dance. His body still bore the modifications that had made him a weapon, but his mind was focused on construction rather than destruction. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving transmission from the outer territories. 3 new species have requested compact membership and 2 more want to discuss protection agreements." Brennan nodded, unsurprised. Word of humanity's victory had spread far beyond the old hegemony boundaries, carrying hope to species that had long believed resistance was futile. "And the research stations?" he asked. "All converted or destroyed, sir." "The last hegemony facility was shut down yesterday. Dr. Hemlock confirms that we've located and freed every human prisoner." "Good." Brennan turned from the viewport, his scarred face reflecting satisfaction. "That we can focus on the future." That future stretched ahead like an uncharted star map, full of possibilities that hadn't existed before a handful of humans had refused to remain caged. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth, that some species, when pushed too far, don't just push back, they reshape the entire board. Humanity had kept its promise. The thing they kept caged beneath their skin, the controlled violence, the persistent fury, the refusal to accept defeat had been unleashed not for conquest, but for justice. And in freeing themselves, they had freed countless others. The cage was broken. It would never be rebuilt. And across the galaxy, in laboratories that now served healing instead of harm, in colonies that governed themselves instead of serving masters, in fleets that protected the innocent instead of exploiting them, a new message echoed: humanity, fuck yeah.